This speaker on which my video is called our third called Market is actually from here with flat hunting in London at the moment. So it's my task to present this paper that explores the impact of the internet on voters' uncertainty. We realized that there was a gap in terms of having an understanding of how the internet can and might modify voting preferences, especially in a context as the current one, where vote preferences are less stable than they used to be. So we thought that it would have been an interesting piece of research to fill the gap in terms of media research that, for a number of reasons, doesn't cover the internet as much as other type of media, and with the political uncertainty that is a very mixed problem in political science. We did talk a lot among us, and we basically prospected two scenarios. We imagined that if the internet had to play a role in modifying or solidifying people's preferences, we imagined it could actually go both ways. Could be that the internet makes people more certain on their previous beliefs and previous preferences, because through the internet they access news that are in line with their preferences. It might actually be the case, and that would be the opposite scenario, that people, by browsing the internet, just come across news that they wouldn't otherwise, and that they are relatively far from their initial preferences. So we sort of formulated into more formal hypotheses that look into this scenario. First of all, we asked ourselves, is the internet going to play any sort of role in determining people's preferences and people's uncertainty? If so, we formulated these two alternative hypotheses. Would the effect be positive in the sense of reinforcing previous preferences, so would be less uncertainty, or would the effect be negative, leading to more uncertainty and more, let's say, openness? Now we look at that issue in the context of the 2011 Irish general election. Now, in the Irish general election of February 2011 is particularly suitable for this type of analysis, because we know there was a very high degree of volatility, and we know that the party that has been in power for 50 years, or what was the major party that was 50 years, had lost 24% of its support. So we knew that as a consequence of the bank bailout, economic crisis, so on and so forth, the government would have suffered a strong loss of votes. So it was in a way a very suitable scenario to test our hypothesis. On the other hand, while researching the issue, I came across an article that Michael Marsh wrote over 10 years ago. And it was actually making the claim that the Irish electorate has a very strong swing potential. That's actually about 50% of voters would be keen on giving their first preference vote to more than one party. Or the preferences, the party ranked first would be very close to the party ranked second. So I'll tell you in a second how we operationalized the dependent variable here. But we computed from the first Irish national election study in 2002 the potential for switching, and we actually realized that it has remained constant. It's about 50% of the electorate We use data from the 2011 wave of the national election study, and this particular wave contains two variables that were latitude and longitude that enable us to identify where respondents were located. Respondents were located in 309 different areas in the country, and they were grouped in groups of 6. In order to estimate our model, sort of be able to say something on causal mechanisms, links using the internet to having certain preferences, we needed a good instrument. We wanted to implement an instrumental approach, and the fact that there was actually such a disaggregated geographical location variable in the dataset enabled us to start the process of encoding the geographical location and searching for whether or not each location was reached by broadband. We are lucky enough that in the country there is very uneven distribution of broadband. For instance, in the Netherlands, this type of study would really be possible because broadband coverage is everywhere. But in Ireland, partially because of the crisis, the plan of full coverage was never implemented, and there is, I don't know how well you can see from this map, but the red dots indicate areas that don't have broadband coverage. And as you can see, even here in Cork, which is the second largest city in the country, just outside the city, there wouldn't be broadband coverage. So it's very uneven, and we use this natural variation, or variation in broadband coverage in order to instrument Rosy the news for political, Rosy the web for political news in a system of two simultaneous equations. Now, as I said, the research design is sort of quasi-experiment. Obviously, in a perfect world, we would have randomly assigned broadband coverage, but this is not the case, and we need to be very careful with our assumptions and show you in a minute why we think we need the assumption that this design is as good as randomly assigned. So we have these two groups, people that live in areas that are reached by broadband coverage and people that live in areas without broadband coverage. It's very important to us that these groups don't differ substantially. One group for some reason is not particularly rich, or particularly progressive, or particularly well educated. And here we run a lot of these checks on the distribution of the two groups across socioeconomic status, aptitudes, beliefs, previous vote history, so on and so forth. And here the two box plots, the two chart with the box plots only represent the covariates that we use in the regression that I'm going to show you in a minute. But we do have a very large set of controls for the distribution across the two groups. And we do think that they are similar enough, similar to the extent that we don't believe there is bias in the distribution of the two groups. We think that in terms of patterns of other media usage, they are very similar. In terms of socioeconomic status, they are very similar. You can see certain variables are not perfectly balanced, but overall, we were fairly happy with the way the two groups sort of match. Now, when it comes to the dependent variable, we did borrow from an article by Crow et al. From 2007, where there was a very good rationalization of this propensity did consider as potential switches those individuals who express either a tie with the most preferred party, they have two parties ties as most preferred, or those individuals that has the most preferred and second most preferred parties only 1 point apart from each other. We also thought that this variable is good as it is, and we also made a transformation in order to have it continuous rather than autonomous. And when we thought, okay, this variable actually makes use of 2 of the express BTBs. Why don't we try to make the most out of it and consider all the preferences expressed by respondents? And so what we did was generating a second dependent variable that is similar enough to the first, but comes with something more, which is called in the paper of openness to different parties. And we measured that by, again, borrowing a measure that is very common in marketing research, as well as in other subfields of political science. It's for instance, used to measure the effective number of parties in party systems. We account for all the preferences expressed by respondents, and we sort of have a distribution that takes higher value when respondents are more open or are more uncertain on the preferences. In terms of covariance, again, there is not much literature to refer to, so we refer to the same article by Kohn et al., and we use socioeconomic status, political aptitudes, and political involvement. Their model was run on European Parliament election, and they included party system variables, which for obvious reasons we don't. So we sort of readapted that model to fit our needs, and we add to that our instrumented variable being browsing for news, for political news. In this graph here, we present the progression outputs in graphical form, just for as a matter of clarity. It's simple and more intuitive. And we also wanted to point at the fact that we do find that actually browsing for internet news, browsing the internet for politically relevant news during the campaign leads to high levels of uncertainty, and we find it across the 2 dependent variables that it is the case, but we also notice that the confidence interval around the mean is very, very large. So estimating the effect is complex. What made us comfortable with our finding is that most of the control variables are in line with what found by Kohn et al., and that variable like party identification is exactly where we expected. So the more you are party identified, the less uncertain you are. So that made us very comfortable with the results, and we still thought that there was an element we needed to account for. As we relied so heavily on the geographical location of respondents, we thought it was important to control for distance. And we did that by including 2 different variables. First, we calculated the distance from the capital, distance from Dublin, under the assumption that Dublin might be more cosmopolitan, more open than the rest of the country, and we did not want to have this difference in the sample. So we ran on the model to ensure that assurance settings the same 2 SLS model with the inclusion of distance. We thought if the distance from the capital has to play a role in both the likelihood of browsing for news and vote uncertainty. It would account for the variation and probably cancel out the effect of the internet. The second type of control we ran, geographical control, was matching via the CEM gathering software. We matched in order to understand if the fact that villages very much clustered together are similar to one another. One might be covered by the internet, the other might be not. So we thought, okay, we want to account for that. And through the CEM software, we could match the sample. We actually also had a very good improvement in the overall measure of imbalance. The overall measure of imbalance dropped by 50%. And the results were basically unchanged. You probably can't see much from these slides, but the point is that variable accounting in the second stage of the equation for browsing for internet online is still significant, even by controlling for distance. So what do we make out of this? We can scrape out one of our two alternative hypotheses. So we actually found that by browsing the web, people seem to doubt more. They don't reinforce their preferences. Is it the case that they come across more information, more heterogeneous information, and therefore they are more doubtful? We don't really know because we have no access to the content that these people browse online, but that's a relatively credible scenario to our eyes. We think that we made a contribution to the field in the sense that we could, with this instrumental variable approach, actually say that the effect of browsing online is directly linked to being more uncertain. And we think that the geographical check that we ran at last made our findings sound enough. We are very much